Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in Eon. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before today's teaching. Next, we will proceed with our discussion of the final lesson of the poison-destroying Peacock mind training. This treatise is divided into the initial meaning, the true meaning, and the final meaning, comprising these three primary aspects. The true meaning is divided into 5 chapters. We are now discussing the 5th chapter. The chapter's name is Destroying Self-Clinging. The chapter on destroying the attachment to self has the initial meaning and the real meaning, which are 2 aspects. This chapter doesn't have a final meaning. Every other chapter has a summary section at the end for your convenience, but this one does not have a summary section. The true meaning is divided into preliminary, main, and concluding practice, which are 3 aspects. Preliminary one has been explained. The main practice, in terms of major divisions, is further divided into 3 parts. Firmly vowing to abandon self-interest, vowing to practice benefiting others, and vowing to eradicate self-clinging. These are the 3 primary aspects. First 2 aspects were covered. The following is eradicate self-clinging. The section on eradicating self-clinging is also divided into 4 aspects. The third aspect previously discussed is that non-conceptuality is the greatest bliss. This has also already been explained. Recognizing the king of self-clinging was covered. There is also subduing the demon of self-clinging. These 3 are explained. Now we come to the last. Using the reasoning of dependent origination and emptiness. Using the reasoning of dependent origination and emptiness to analyze. This is further divided into a brief explanation as well as an extensive explanation comprising these 2 aspects. Let me take a moment to talk about this particular point first. La tirkada shawa chela zir yo prinzambi chola mara ya me prinzambi chola nzal nzola ram dangzan yerpi lanna zo chum. Here the author first gives a brief explanation, because from here on, in fact, the author relies on the reasoning of emptiness from the root verses of the Middle Way, and applies Vajrayana methods, and then further continues the discussion. In our first class back last year, as you may remember, I have introduced Dharma to everyone. Although he seems a Hinayana scholar, he actually was a Vajrayana yogi. He was expert in root verses on the Middle Way and can recite it. He realized Nagarjuna's intent. He was such a absolutely amazing and truly wonderful master who combined the teachings of Madhyamaka and Vajrayana. While it appears to use Madhyamaka reasoning or discernment of prajna paramita, but in fact it also contains some Vajrayana mantras within it. When I'm translating, there are some mantras hard to be directly translated. Now, as we delve deeper into his teachings, for example, in the Tibetan text, there is Maraya, which means to subdue or to destroy. Soklanyen actually means to burn in its original context specifically. These syllables appear in the Tibetan text. But when we translate them here, I translate them directly according to their meaning in a straightforward way. What does the playful speech refer to? It means to kill the life of clinging to existence. The notion of grasping at non-existence must be burned. The king of self-clinging must be destroyed. This is the way he expresses it here, as stated. In other words, when we say the playful speech in the verse, it refers to what we've discussed above, including the palace of our discursive thoughts, where the demon king of self-clinging resides in. This is actually a form of linguistic wordplay in the traditional sense, or a kind of rhetorical device, or how should I put it, when the author is expressing certain special states, his tone sometimes employs expressions like emaho, which is an exclamation of wonder, like excellent, marvelous, and so on. It appears in sutras. The same applies in the tantric texts. Later, when these great masters, composing their treatises, they have entered profound states and would employ various linguistic devices and expressions. This is a kind of linguistic play. So the literal meaning of the verse is, what is the meaning of the playful expressions that I employ? As explained below, they serve to destroy all the demons of self-clinging, eradicating self-attachment. In brief, from the Madhyamaka perspective, there are both concise and extensive explanations. In brief, those who cling to existence should be killed. All such notions of inherent existence should be completely destroyed. All attachment to inherent existence, since they belong to eternalism, should therefore be subdued and eliminated. This is the attachment to mere existence. If one clings to the complete non-existence, believing everything is mere nothingness, then this falls under the extreme view of nihilism or annihilationism. This too must be burned away. Generally speaking, attachments to existence or non-existence may temporarily appear as practice, but ultimately lead to rebirth in the three lower realms or three higher realms. It is explained in the precious garland of Madhyamaka. With views of existence, one is born in higher realms. With views of non-existence, one falls into lower realms. Where exactly does one take rebirth with views of existence? They take rebirth in the realms of humans, celestial beings, or powerful asuras. Non-existence view leads to hell, ghost, animal. Views of existence and non-existence must all be completely destroyed. Views of existence are to be completely killed, while views of non-existence are to be burned away. Thus, from this profound perspective, in Vajrayana, there are fire offerings and various symbolic weapons, including those of Dharma, protectors, or wrathful Vajra deities. In fact, these do not represent that they possess a particularly violent anger, but rather it is our own intense attachment that must be destroyed using another kind of very forceful weapon. Therefore, all of these things in Vajrayana Buddhism appear fierce or wrathful, with bared fangs or wrathful expressions and other intimidating features. In reality, these appearances represent a powerful means to destroy all improper attachments and deluded concepts within our mind stream, as well as the king of self-clinging. If a sense of I exists, self-grasping will follow. This king of self-attachment must be completely destroyed. Otherwise, if there is a view of self, one will inevitably fall into the lower realms. So, from the perspective of Madhyamaka, if one perceives existence and non-existence, perceives self-nature and other nature, just as it is stated in the root verses of the Middle Way, perceiving existence or non-existence, self-nature or other nature, one doesn't get Buddha's teachings. If we see existence or non-existence, if we see self-nature and other nature, this does not mean we have seen the true meaning of the Dharma. So what is the meaning of Dharma? Existence, non-existence can't be established. Why is that? Because if something truly exists, then being already existent, it cannot be produced anew. If it doesn't exist, it can't be created from nothing. There are many such reasonings in Madhyamaka which everyone should be aware of. If we determine things as existent or non-existent, that is obviously not the ultimate view. In this way, we can completely and thoroughly destroy wrong views of existence and non-existence in our mind streams. When we studied the ornament of the middle way, I remember, especially at the end of the treatise, it says, therefore all views of eternalism and nihilism are abandoned in this treatise. If eternalism and nihilism views exist, they must all be abandoned in Madhyamaka, actually. What does this mean? Because we have views of eternalism and nihilism. If something exists conventionally, this is a form of conventional eternalism. If it exists conventionally but doesn't exist ultimately, that is a nihilist view. These are the inferior views of eternalism and nihilism. Eternalism refers to things considered unchanging. Nihilism denies causality and posits complete non-existence. When they are combined, some think things exist conventionally and thereby avoid the extreme of nihilism. They do not exist ultimately and thereby avoid eternalism. So it is said. But ultimately, existence and non-existence are extremes. This was cited in a commentary on Middle Way. Both existence and non-existence are, in fact, conceptual extremes. Affirming either existence or non-existence is an extreme. So Nagarjuna stated, I make no assertions, I am free from all faults. In the face of ultimate reality, we cannot definitively assert any existence, non-existence, self, or other. Thus, emptiness free from the four extremes and 8 conceptual elaborations can only be expressed in this way. But it is not that our mind is always fixated on emptiness as some kind of thing without existence. If we do that, even this must be abandoned as well. The true ultimate reality is inexpressible. As the Prajnaparamita Sutras clearly describe, it is an inconceivable and indescribable state. So here, if we analyze with Madhyamaka approach, we find that asserting existence or non-existence is equally unreasonable. Both must be transcended, completely burned away, and thoroughly destroyed. So in Vajrayana, there are all kinds of killing, chopping, burning, as well as devouring, such as various iron hammers, knives, and other tools. And all sorts of spears and the use of flames, all these various wrathful manifestations. This is not simply about killing, especially towards enemies with whom he has a really bad relationship. Unlike modern conflicts between nations or ethnic groups or internal strives, people genuinely view others as enemies and then use various kinds of their own weapons, such as guns, knives, missiles, and other destructive implements. In modern warfare, the traditional weapons we used to have are largely obsolete, with unmanned drones now conducting destruction. In the future, if wars break out in this world, many people might need to learn drones in order to achieve victory. Just like many of us who are working now, if you don't know how to use a computer, you simply can't work. In most urban office settings, only after mastering computer skills can one generally perform their work. In the same way, in the future, conflicts may center around drone technology, employing shells, missiles, and others. In today's mundane world, people harboring genuine self-directed hatred utilize these various harmful weapons, whether it's normal weapons or nuclear weapons, all of them will be used. But when it comes to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, although they may appear wrathful, often holding implements of subjugation, when we study their function through the scriptures and treatises, we find that unlike ordinary human behaviors, they're totally different. Thus, in Vajrayana tradition, these seemingly fierce implements and symbols are employed to destroy stubborn, deluded thoughts within our own mind streams. It appears to be union of male and female Buddhas, which might appear to show affection, but the behaviors represent the union of yin and yang, or union of appearance and emptiness, serving as symbolic expressions. They are not expressions of greed or anger. Therefore, here we should also understand that regardless of the treatises written by renowned great Indian masters or teachings and treatises of masters in Tibetan Buddhism, as well as those from other traditions, including Chinese esoteric Buddhism. These teachings that are difficult for ordinary people to comprehend contain profound and essential meanings. It's just that, when we ordinary people see these weapons, we relate them to us. Perhaps this represents actual anger. Seeing wrathful deities, we think he's really angry, how frightening. When viewing deities in union or yin-yang integration, we might exclaim, what is this? It looks exactly like the worldly desires we have. Although it appears quite similar, the reality is fundamentally different, not only in Vajrayana Buddhism, but in any study of yin and yang, or in profound systems of logic, there exist diverse teachings with deeper meanings. So some Buddhists have studied only partially, for example, only some Theravada Buddhism or Northern Buddhism, or just the exoteric teachings, or only some parts of the common vehicle teachings may have a limited understanding of both worldly phenomena and the comprehensive Buddhist perspective. It still remains limited. If you really knew, as I have mentioned before, the profound elements in Vajrayana actually exist within the canonical scriptures. They are present in the exoteric sutras as well, though in more concealed and implicit forms. When we say afflictions of Bodhi, or the well-known saying that afflictions are indeed the seed of the Tathagata, as said in the famous Vimalakirti Sutra, afflictions are the seeds of the Tathagata. From the perspective of exoteric teachings, how could greed, anger, and ignorance be seeds of Buddhahood or the Buddha's relics, etc.? Without deeper understanding of these profound teachings, you remain limited to the familiar concepts, what you commonly know, or what the majority of people believe. A faithful Buddhist or a traditional monastic, someone who is ordained with an absolutely shaved head, wearing robes, should even be very mindful while walking. This is the Buddhist image. But does this image actually represent all Buddhists? In fact, not really. This image is just one particular part within the broader context of Buddhism, and not the entirety of the tradition. It is one side of its teachings. So when it comes to studying Buddhist teachings, if from a young age we can truly gain a broad understanding of both exoteric and esoteric Buddhism, it becomes beneficial. Otherwise, we might take some detours. That's all of the brief explanation. Next comes the detailed explanation, 2 parts. They are analyzing consciousness and union of appearance and emptiness. 2 sections. The analysis of consciousness is divided into 2 parts: subduing consciousness and the benefits of it. First, let's learn the subduing of consciousness, our mind, that fundamental consciousness.
作为一点南西马特那等阵点不嘎不啦吃人有嘎不啦吃人有的作为一点南西特湾那木索作为人样拉不人点
When the chief mental consciousness is not tamed, there is the danger that king ego clinging may lead it astray. When the chief consciousness is tamed, vision and so forth will be destroyed along with the chief. If we do not entirely subdue our own consciousness completely, what might be the consequence, what might happen? We risk being controlled by evil king of self-grasping that dwells within. He quietly and gently leads you away, taking careful, measured steps. Our consciousness plays a crucial role in exoteric and esoteric traditions, recognizing the mind's nature, which is the master of consciousness. Without recognizing it, self-clinging will lead us astray, and you won't even know where you are being taken. it will repeatedly cause us harm. But if you've successfully subdued your consciousness, if you have mastered your own mind, then the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and the faculty of mind, respectively, the other 6 consciousnesses will also naturally cease. It's like when a wall collapses, the patterns on the wall naturally disappear as well. Or if you cut down the root of a tree, the leaves, branches, and fruits will naturally fall away and cease. Therefore, it is very important to carefully analyze our consciousness in our daily lives and to understand it more deeply. To analyze consciousness, we must first tame it, to tame our consciousness. There exist numerous methods and approaches in the Buddhist tradition. The essential point is to deeply examine yourself. I discussed this in my last class as well. And the main point is how each person examines their own mind. This is Buddhism's distinctive feature. If you haven't recognized your mind yet, many of your actions will often be futile and in fact not very important. Observing 100 different dharmas externally is not as good as observing one's own mind internally. Looking outward, seeing 100 dharmas from afar is not important as looking at your mind. This should be from Mifam Rinpoche, from the Dzogchen instructions in The Old Dog Spits Gold. This text, The Old Dog Spits Gold, is a fascinating teaching. It was back in the crisp, colorful autumn of the year 1987, right here at our institute, that everything began, marking the start of a memorable chapter for all of us. Returning from Mount Wutai, at that time, it was just Tenzin Rinpoche and me proofreading this great perfection text. At that time, he mentioned that there were different versions of this scriptural evidence. It seemed that he was living in a wooden house then. Autumn of 1987, we had just returned from Mount Wutai and were proofreading. Recited Tibetan very quickly then, and I felt quite envious. He read much slower. When we were proofreading, there was a scriptural evidence. I still remember it now, but this one I had always wanted ever since 1987 to translate The Old Dog Spits Gold by Mipam Rinpoche. I wanted to translate, but it seems like His Holiness taught it at the Nanshan Retreat House. His Holiness taught it once or twice. When I first arrived, I had great faith in this Dharma. Mipam Rinpoche once compared himself to an old dog. And this Dzogchen teaching is truly like gold. A dog in the world is not considered a very noble being, as it lacks the qualities of virtues that are typically associated with nobility, but it can still spit out precious scripture from its mouth. But later it was never translated, and now it's probably totally impossible, right? At this point in life, wanting to translate certain things, but it just hasn't happened. Actually, this should be very instructive, Dzogchen teaching method. The main point is to observe your own mind. It's the same here. If just now we didn't subdue our consciousness, this primary consciousness, then self-grasping might arise. As you all know, if you don't recognize the nature of mind, your self-grasping will be very strong. No matter how small something is, it can become especially big. As you all know, many Dharma friends around us, some of them probably have some recognition of the nature of mind. So when it comes to trivial matters in the world, they are not so attached. But if you haven't tamed your mind at all, haven't gentled it, then your self-grasping will be in nature even more significantly severe. With self-grasping, of course, your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. We often say we know, experience, and taste what we hear, smell, and taste. We become attached to each of these, and we accept each of them with understanding and kindness, giving rise to clinging to phenomena and creating various things. So when you truly recognize the nature of mind, although these appear before you, it's just like an old person watching children play games. You see everything clearly, but you won't really ever deliberately suffer or deliberately and intentionally follow after them. Appearances do not bind you. Attachment binds you. Cut off attachment, Naropa. When my Tibetan Weibo account wasn't blocked yet, I posted in both Tibetan and Chinese. I think it was in 2014 or sometime around then. I think it was somewhere in the preliminary practices when Tilopa spoke to Naropa. He said, these appearances, they will not bind you, but attachment will bind you. So you need to put effort is mainly in cutting off your attachment. To cut off attachment, you must first recognize mind's nature. Haven't seen your mind's nature, then it might not be possible to cut it off. It seems that's all I have for today. Not sure. Maybe I've ended up talking a bit too much about Dzogchen. It would be better to use exoteric methods. Tame this one mind and everything will be tamed. In the 5th chapter of the way of Bodhisattva, we have learned that tame this one mind and everything else will be tamed, and everything else will be tamed. Earlier, when discussing mindfulness and clear awareness, we used the elephant analogy. If the elephant isn't tamed, it will trample everything. So if we can subdue our own mind, then everything else in the world becomes much easier to handle. That's why I think for those old men who start wars in the world, those old men should just talk to him and tell them to first learn how to tame their own minds. If there's ever a chance, perhaps, for those elderly men out there who can't live without fighting every day, who rely on war and selling military weapons every single working day, only those who can truly live and sleep well. If you can tame your own mind, the resources of the world, of the earth, are totally sufficient for us, for our 7 billion people. But if our minds are not tamed and we keep fighting, seizing, and snatching from each other, even 100 Earth's resources wouldn't be enough, because human greed is limitless. So one country basically has the whole world, the wealth of all 200 plus countries. It still wouldn't be satisfied. It would want more and might even go to the heaven of the 33 to take their territory. So I think, as you might agree, many of us can see well, without controlling our minds, self-centeredness will arise. Everyone should be able to see this as well. If we subdue consciousness and understand our minds, then everything else becomes much easier to handle. In Vajrayana, when we talk about subduing and union, it doesn't necessarily mean realizing mind's nature, but the expression here is a little bit different. Later in Chan Buddhism, through meditation, one realizes mind and sees its true nature. In Dzogchen, one recognizes awareness. There are different ways to express this, but at that time, the author always believed that we must subdue our own mind. How do we subdue the mind? It's not as if we can really use a knife to stab it into our own heart. In reality, we use Madhyamaka reasoning to analyze what it's really like, what the mind is truly like, or use Vajrayana methods to examine what the origin of the mind is, what its abiding place is, and where it goes. What is the mind's innate luminosity like? Its natural luminosity, its essential emptiness, and what it's like when these two are completely united. When we observe like this, those with good roots can instantly understand. That's why so many seasoned practitioners, whether Khenpos or Khenmos, or even many who don't have such titles, but have recognized mind's nature, for these people, all the games in the world seem especially laughable. Other than that, there's nothing worth clinging to. But ordinary people are often attached to their own self-nature. This makes sense because they have never received these teachings. So let's take a moment to see exactly how we can subdue the king of consciousness, which means learning to gain control over understanding this aspect is important. Next are the benefits of this.
Dina yikir namshin the tartang, zig jatro lasso yutman chi, dagdang the conzumba yutman yer, namstok jamburkin down jaran chu.
Therefore, you should tame mental consciousness, and form, sound, smell, taste, and the rest will cease to be. I and mine will cease to be, and king conceptualization will then lack a basis. Earlier, we said that ending self-grasping and seeing mind's nature is important. So one should subdue the Lord of Consciousness, the Master of Consciousness. In other words, it is very important to recognize our own mind. If this is the case, then external forms, sounds, smells, tastes, and tactile objects, these do not exist. Because if our consciousness does not exist, Yogacara mind only, all external establishments are nothing but manifestations arising from our own mind.
The
Madhyamaka, forgot the Chinese one. The meaning, container world and sentient world, are all born from the mind. All kinds of phenomena arise from the mind. I already recited the Tibetan, but the meaning is that all forms and phenomena are mind created. If we have already destroyed the main mind, if we have recognized it, then the external world has no form, sound, smell, or taste. Similarly, I and mine, myself, didn't I mention earlier that the king of self-grasping becomes embarrassed and fades away? There's no I or mine. If there is no I and mine, as we discussed yesterday, the king of deluded conceptual thoughts I possess, where could he reside? He becomes embarrassed and naturally leaves just like, didn't we talk about this yesterday? There's a notorious gangster boss which is hiding in a dark room for many years. But later, if we realize we have already solved the case, then this mafia boss would be deeply ashamed and slink away in disgrace. In the end, he wouldn't be able to do such things anymore. So if we first come to know our own mind, then everything becomes so much easier to handle effectively. That's why, as I quoted before, I don't know when in the three realms mind is primary. Those who observe mind attain ultimate liberation. Those who cannot observe sink into ultimate delusion. I mentioned this once before. I think I used it in some teaching before from the Mind Ground Sutra. Actually, this is very important. In the three realms, the mind is primary. Those who can observe the mind attain liberation. Those who cannot observe mind sink into ultimate delusion. This is indeed the case. Originally, everyone possesses this nature of mind, but those who can observe it become realized due to karmic connections. If you can observe according to the Dharma, then you have realized it. But for those who cannot observe, even though they have encountered a teacher and are very attentive in their practice, in reality, there's nothing that can be done. If one cannot observe, then there is no way. However much you explain to them, including us, the deepest guidance texts in Tibetan Buddhism, I covered various aspects when it was more convenient. Although I don't have much realization myself, at least theoretically, it should basically be correct. There shouldn't be major mistakes because I have relied on extraordinary teachers. In following them, I have received their teachings carefully. About these transmissions, when the time comes, there may not be the opportunity. So at that time, I just didn't listen to various opinions from others and taught the great perfection wisdom, soaring Garuda, the treasury of the Dharma Dhatu, and so on. This should have already been taught thoroughly in this language. But for those who have a karmic connection and faith, these teachings truly are the works created by the great masters of the past. Between us, there's only one lineage transmission, nothing else. The way they instructed us to pass these down, following how the lineage masters taught, has been conveyed accurately and truthfully. After sharing them, many people
have come to some understanding of their own mind's true nature. But if one lacks faith, there is nothing can be done. So sometimes this really actually isn't very easy to understand properly. I've mentioned this before, haven't I? Wasn't it Saraha, that remarkable Indian Mahasiddha? He was also cooking curry when he entered meditation for 12 years. After 12 years, his first words were, "Is my curry ready yet?" He's still thinking about his curry. His Dakini, in a particularly mocking tone, said, "You meditated 12 years and you're still attached to your curry? Aren't you ashamed?" She hit his weak spot precisely. He continued to practice in that state and became enlightened. So some people practice for a long time, but it also depends on conditions. Of course, these masters appear this way outwardly too. But among our practitioners, some seem to have stayed for a while at the institute, at the Dharma center, 10, 20, 30 years. But outwardly, they still haven't recognized mind's nature, even theoretically. This is actually a bit difficult, I think, to achieve great enlightenment. Complete realization like those great masters of the past is challenging. But at least knowing what one's mind is like, something others haven't recognized. If I were to explain this principle, everyone should understand this. Once we understand our mind's nature, then the external world of sights, sounds, smells, and tastes, it may still appear to you, even though it manifests in discriminating wisdom. The images in a clear mirror, though they do appear, you won't affirm or negate nor engage in conflict. You won't create negative karma. If you don't create negative karma, even if you have some understanding, in reality, the pool of karma is truly inconceivable. So what I really want is to be able to see for myself exactly what happens next. Truly taming the mind and recognizing its nature is very important. Once you reach a certain level of realization, then all the gains and losses, all the various truths and falsehoods that indeed exist in the complex external world, this become much easier to handle. For such a knowledgeable and capable person, these things really should not be an issue anymore today. So let's see. This Dharma teaching is indeed sometimes a bit profound. If we speak about it directly, it's also somewhat challenging, but perhaps this is truly what it means. We have no choice but to speak about it this way, right? Next, let's examine the second point, the union of appearance and emptiness. The first point, split in two, has already been covered. Now we are the second part of the detailed explanation, the union of appearance and emptiness. Union of appearance and emptiness 3. Self-liberation of deluded thoughts, then the benefits of it, and illustrative analogies. These three sections, earlier, the second point, union of appearance and emptiness, was split into self-liberation of deluded thoughts, its benefits and analogies. These three aspects. First is the self-liberation of deluded thoughts. When you have spoken to the king in this way, you will know that conceptual construction is inherently free and is the ultimate reality. The six senses are false, like a magical elephant. Subject and object are false, like a phantom's deeds. Didn't we discuss this earlier? Our own delusive and misleading thoughts in reality actually do not exist. If you recognize your own mind, everything disappears. These principles have been explained continuously just now. Since beginningless time, dwelling in the palace of conceptual thoughts, this king, this mind, the king of conceptualization, when I told him about everything that happened, deluded thoughts naturally merge into the Dharma Dhatu. My earlier explanation applies better here. It's like the boss of a mafia gang, once he's recognized, he runs away. Since beginningless time, the deluded thoughts hidden within our consciousness have brought countless harms to beings. Finally, when we recognize them, it really simply comes down to being aware or unaware.
In many Chen traditions, this is explained in the same way. For those with the right karmic connection, it's as easy as turning your hand very quick. In the Manjushri Dzogchen prayer, as mentioned earlier, the first verse says it's too easy. Because when the Guru guides the mind's secret, it's almost hard for oneself to believe. It's simply a matter of delusion and true awakening all happening in a single fleeting instant. Chan Buddhism says this too. When you look inward, recognizing it is enlightenment. If you don't recognize it and remain confused, you sink into samsara. So all the principles we discussed above show how important the mind is. Without mind, no external objects, no six consciousnesses. These principles were hidden earlier. When this is brought up before the king, then these deluded thoughts and the king, the royal palace and the king within it, the support and the supported, or ultimately in the end eventually dissolve into the Dharma Dhatu. At that moment, the six consciousnesses, because the king has fled. If the king has indeed fled, then the king's six loyal ministers, without hesitation, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind consciousnesses, they also have no real substance at all. They are just like an illusory elephant. Everyone knows illusionary elephants. They don't have any true existence in reality. They can't actually destroy anything. Subject and object also aren't real, just like the illusory activities conjured up by magic. The activities in palaces conjured by a magician, all their aspects, in reality, as a matter of fact, none of them are truly real, if we are being completely honest. So if we truly recognize this, everything becomes very simple. His Holiness at the sacred Mount Wutai mentioned in one of his teachings that the Manjushri warrior who had always been with him, whom he had never seen before, he finally saw today. In my notes from Mount Wutai, His Holiness's Song of Joy has been translated, as well as another text. Whenever he was at Mount Wutai, His Holiness noted he had never seen before the Manjushri Bodhisattva with him who had always been with him. But he hadn't seen him before. Today he finally saw him. So last time I actually didn't really, talk much about this. At the 10th anniversary memorial ceremony for Khenpo Deva's parinirvana, I shared the writing that I had completed back when I was just 25 years old, thoughts I had during that particular stage of my life, record of the sacred sites of Mount Wutai, and I have already given this to everyone, but only in electronic form. Some people might think it's acceptable, but personally, because at that time I had just left school and become a monk, I had been a monk for 2 years. I was 25 years old. Same age as many college graduates, around 25. At that time myself, there was no internet then. No current information was available. Some aspects of the renowned and sacred Mount Wutai in particular, mainly in my mountain record, what did I discuss with everyone? The dependents of Mount Wutai are all special manifestations of Manjushri Bodhisattva. This was main focus. As for other stories, other introductions to palaces and temples, there should actually be a lot of those. But at that time, Khenpo Deva and the Dharma friends asked me to write it. Actually, my translation skills then, the writing is not very good. But it seemed acceptable in Tibetan. No major additions or changes this year. During winter, when I had some time, I reproofread the Tibetan version. After proofreading, it seemed all right. If a current university student graduates today, some of them are impressive, but others, because back then our level of Tibetan was basically non-existent. Only in third year of middle school, we had 2 or 3 classes, nothing else. Previously, I learned some while herding cattle. The Mount Wutai record was written in Tibetan. This year, I translated it. I also included some AI-generated portraits in it. as well. It seems that the AI's artwork actually looks quite good. Future employment prospects for artists might be somewhat challenging because if we hire an artist to paint, it might take a long time and cost a lot of money. So this is also something important to keep an eye on and observe carefully, especially as circumstances. Maybe some Dharma friends will use this as a way to make a pilgrimage to Mount Wutai. Some say they made pilgrimage before, but aren't sure. They went in a daze. But actually, whether it's the temples of Mount Wutai, many great Tibetan Buddhist masters, including Vimalamitra, have resided there long-term in rainbow body form. Mount Wutai is meaningful. Some people want to go again. If this can play even a small role in that, then the Shaanxi Tourism Department should maybe, give me a little bit of a bonus if it helps at all. But maybe it won't have any effect at all. But no matter what, I heard that over in Bhutan, the Adrimi pilgrimage with my guru 30 years ago has had a significant impact, especially over time. Now, all kinds of different groups have over time gone there, including to places like Tiger's Nest and Kuji Monastery. Many of them are like this. One day, there was a group of 60 people. Each person brought a book and introduced it there. But these are the master's blessings. I'm not saying that I did anything myself, but generally when you're young, if you don't give up and do even a little bit, when you get old, when physical strength and wisdom lack, looking back on life, sometimes you might unexpectedly feel a little sense of accomplishment. Other times you feel very ashamed, feeling like you haven't done much and have been quite lazy recently. I'm not sure how this topic of illusion came up, but what I mean is, yes, regarding His Holiness, the Mount Wutai teachings also mentioned that His Holiness met Manjushri Bodhisattva. So when do we also rely on teachings to recognize our mind's nature? What we hadn't seen before, we now see. After seeing it, we realize I was so attached to emotions, career, to wealth, so attached. Once you recognize your mind's nature, wow, you see that none of that really matters. As it says in the Avatamsaka Sutra, worldly phenomena are like illusions. All worldly phenomena are like illusions. If we can understand this, our minds will remain unmoved. If we know this, our minds won't be disturbed. We won't be troubled by conceptual thoughts, and we won't really be unhappy every day. None of that will happen. Take a look at your own practice. If your practice isn't good on the surface, it might seem like you're very capable, but in reality, that might not be the case. I'm not sure if I've mentioned this before. Chan Master Jigong and Emperor Liangwu once simply went out to admire the snowy scenery because Chan Master Jigong was his national preceptor. Emperor Liangwu saw a mountain without snow. While admiring the snow scene, that mountain was bare, the snow melted. He asked, "How strange, why does this mountain have no snow? All the snow has melted." Then Chan Master Jigong said, "Oh, there's a great practitioner here. Relying on the power of his cultivation, he has practiced for a long time. The snow simply cannot remain on this mountain. It just cannot stay here on this mountain. It all melted away." The king was amazed, just like some leaders nowadays. When they witness some rather extraordinary miracles, they find them rare. But other theoretical things don't amaze them. Then the king was impressed. He said, "This person is remarkable. I must invite him to the palace and make offerings to him." Then Jigong said, "Perhaps it would be better if you didn't invite him. Otherwise, he might become arrogant." Although his cultivation is quite good, his realization is not that high. If you do this, it could harm both him and others. But the king didn't listen and insisted on inviting him. Someone named Hu Hai was invited to the palace. When brought to the palace, wow, in every aspect, his practice, his virtue, he seemed excellent. The king thought Chan Master Jigong's assessment was wrong. They're saying he was so good. Why do you say his cultivation isn't deep enough? Then Chan Master Jigong said, "If you don't believe me, let the two of us receive offerings and compare." So on the first day, the king offered food to both of them. When he offered them food, the food given to him was not good, while Chan Master Zhigong's food was excellent. But Hu Hai noticed this already, yet he kept enduring it and pretended not to mind. But he actually felt very uncomfortable inside. Although he possessed supernatural powers, he could even melt the snow on the mountain. He endured it on the first day. He didn't show any sign of it on the surface. Then the king said, "Look, I offered you so much, so very much," and he doesn't care at all. So his spiritual attainment must be very high. Then Zhigong said, "Try it again and see what happens." On the second day, the king offered Chan Zhigong all kinds of precious silks as offerings, but gave nothing to Hu Hai. At this point, he himself really liked these silks and became extremely angry, eventually dying from his own rage. People today are similar. Because he don't get something from the king, he died of anger. After dying from anger, the king was very sad, feeling that he hadn't treated him properly. Later, Chan Master Zhigong said there was a way. He probably, due to his karma, will quickly be reborn from an egg. Very soon, not far away, he was reborn as a magpie, a small newborn magpie chick. Then they just brought it over. On its body, the characters for Hu Hai were still written. Later, the little magpie was brought over and gently placed together with his corpse. Chan Master Zhigong guided him directly, as if pointing straight to the truth. From then on, his corpse somehow came back to life. After being revived, he finally attained great enlightenment. So sometimes when we look at external merits, or some things that seem quite impressive, if we haven't recognized the nature of mind, at critical moments those things will still erupt. At crucial times, our own habitual tendencies may at times surface. As Master Hu Hai used mentioned, he was famous in history, but compared to Chan Master Zhigong, or simply in terms of pacifying the 8 worldly concerns for self and others, there was still a significant gap. So for many of us who propagate and share the Dharma and practice externally in our everyday lives, while living relatively simple and uncomplicated lives in their day-to-day routines, unless there's special necessity, we shouldn't be petty or calculating, especially for those practicing in mountain retreats. These practitioners who have never seen the complexities of society, once they encounter things in practice and daily life, when I finally found some, after searching for quite a while, I just couldn't help. Like recent college graduates, the students who came out felt very naive, thinking the world is a wonderful place outside of TV and movies. They haven't really experienced real life in society. Once they encounter it, it turns out that it wasn't in his heart. What they wanted, they find people disappointing and things difficult. So in the end, he finally decided to actually commit suicide. We practitioners are alike. Some of the younger ones may not have entered society yet. Those who have entered society fare slightly better. Whatever good or bad they face, after so many ups and downs, in the end, some end up battered. Some, unfortunately, may never recover. And in fact, there are all sorts of various different situations. There are all kinds of circumstances. But we really shouldn't see the whole world as so real and solid. In fact, the things that actually happen in our dreams and things happening in our reality, there is no difference. Once you gain some understanding, you should act as if dreaming, continuously doing meaningful things. As for meaningless things, you won't be that interested in them. So next, he basically put the entire paper here in its entirety, right here, in its entirety, already explained above. Now, he uses a metaphorical approach to explain, for example, in our practice, entering and exiting meditation and how to turn post-meditation actions into the path. He thoughtfully discusses this important principle here, providing further explanation. Then comes the second section, the key benefits of this. If you understand it this way, what are the benefits? The Tibetan text has 3 lines. I made it 4, so the top and bottom are symmetrical. Such being the case, extirpate construction, transform egotistic view into space. Since there is neither I nor you, transfer attachment and aversion to the innate. If we clearly understand the principles explained above, these discriminating thoughts, these demon king of discrimination will be subdued. At this point, there is no longer a subject and object, not a mind grasp or object grasp. Both are absent. The view of self merges back into its original Dharma Dhatu. At this time, greed and anger are normalized. Greed and anger have merged into their own inherent nature simply. And this way, there is truly no more hatred, no more resentment. You and I, all the various rights and wrongs, black and white in the world, as well as right and wrong, existence and non-existence, all kinds of truth and falsehood and so on, in the face of this state, all of these are absent. Everything is as we discussed earlier. If you truly understand the mind's nature, subject-object attachement disappear, the deeply ingrained and persistent view of self you once had is gone. Then greed, anger, ignorance, hatred, everything, although they may appear, are just like things in a dream. They don't really amount to anything. This point, perhaps for us right now, there is a method that is also really quite important. For example, AI technology is very advanced now. It manifests without inherent existence. It can really accomplish so many things, including, for example, when we sometimes give lectures outside regarding these lectures, I also think about the content of the lecture location and time of the lecture. These do not change, but the method and the way of speaking can be easily transformed into other languages. This is very real, actually. And when we explain things on a screen to others, real and artificial aspects. So what is real? Indeed, at a certain time, right here, a real person discussed these topics. So what is fake? For example, I don't understand Japanese, but I can speak in Japanese. I don't understand German, but I can speak German. And this language, my voice quality, if it is processed by AI, it is still my voice, but my voice is presented in another way. So in this case, actually there are appearances and there is emptiness. Appearance and emptiness are inseparable. Actually, this is how the world is. In the past, seeing reality as an illusion was hard to grasp. Dreams are easy to grasp, but illusions are harder to understand. But in this era, many people experience illusions within illusions, dream within a dream. This world relies on a dreamlike illusion to do things that are in themselves illusory. This is actually quite rare. So I hope that it is important for younger people, especially those in their teens and early 20s, to take the time to learn the rapidly evolving technologies of today. After learning this, there are 2 possibilities. One possibility is you become so immersed you can't get out. This is entirely possible because many kids play online games nowadays, and in the end, they really do get addicted to them. They can't pull themselves out at all. This is quite a dangerous thing. There's another possibility. Because this world is so illusory, we can use convenient methods of illusion to spread Buddhist teachings, making it possible for millions of people to understand. So as Buddhists, we can't just keep saying, everything is illusory. Don't look, don't learn, don't do anything. That's not my attitude at all. For those who are older with little life remaining, the main focus should be on actual practice, truly observing your own mind. We've received such excellent teachings. If we don't reflect now, when will we have time? This must be considered for those who are younger, understanding the world's illusory forms, illusory ethics, rely on your methods to come up with some fresh and innovative new ideas, and then guide some people in the world. This is also very important. So now when we encounter even a small problem, even just a minor one, we become extremely timid, afraid to act, fearful. But there's really no need for this. as it was said in the Mahaprajna Paramita Shastra, like a great illusionist, by the power of illusion with the skill and finesse, is able to change the minds of an entire nation. An illusionist, relying on the power of illusion, can transform a country's people. The internet is like this too. Because of the power of illusion, the minds of thousands upon thousands of people in the world can be changed. So I think that we Buddhists really shouldn't fall behind either. Because if everyone in the world is using this and we Buddhists can't use it, it's a bit of a loss. Since in the future, most people will look at current things. So our previous ideas and methods need some adjustment. I am also especially grateful for the dedication of many people. No matter where I went in the past, it was always through hard work. I haven't accumulated worldly wealth, not interested, not possible for me. When I was in a relatively good position in various aspects, if I wasn't interested, then now that I've reached this age, it would be impossible. But in teaching Dharma, writing treatises, translating works, in this aspect, indeed, regardless of whether it was worth it, my youth, the memories, the days, and the moments of my life have basically all been devoted to this. It's like a business person who took their life completely into their projects and career. Everyone is different after all. So reflecting more on this aspect and ideas is also very important for us. Next, I'll explain through analogies, discussing states like post-meditation experience and inseparability of appearance and emptiness. Actually, these are very good. If you sing these Vajra songs regularly in the future, it would be truly very meaningful and interesting. Remove the shackles of high and mediocre intellect, which, like rabbit horns, are neither sharp nor dull. Unite into equality everything worldly and transcendental, which, like a barren woman's child, is neither clever nor foolish. Release into the great middle all arising and perishing, which, like the hair of a tortoise, is neither short nor long. Unite into a single ultimate all-conventional phenomena, which, like an echo, have been forever empty. Here, there are 4 metaphors: rabbit's horn, barren woman's daughter, turtle's hair, and echo. To explain them separately, a rabbit's horn has neither sharpness nor dullness because it never existed. So whether sharp or dull, it simply doesn't exist. In the same way, among worldly people, superior, middling, and lesser faculties, all of these are now free from bondage. There are 2 versions here. One version specifically says free from the 4 maras. We'll check that later. In the commentaries, I wanted to look it up, but I'm short on time today. After finishing the teaching this morning, I must travel elsewhere. So I just really didn't have enough time to check the major commentaries, you know. Previously, I taught in the evenings, but now it's daytime. In a quiet, dimly lit small room, there's a wise old monk and an exceptionally handsome young man, a Tibetan handsome man in traditional dress. There were thousands of followers before. Now, it has declined to the point where maybe Dharmaraksita would feel sad if he saw my situation. It's really a little heartbreaking. When I started teaching, were so many people present. Now, there are only 2 representative elders left, the only remaining elders in the group. Within the group of people we are referring to, there is always one individual who stands out significantly. Just like the rabbit's horn I mentioned earlier, as an example, there are no such restrictions or limitations. Though it's like this, whether sharp or dull faculties, we say someone is sharp-minded or dull. This person has good foundation, is smart, but ultimately, none of these really matter. At the time of death, everything is emptiness. Like the daughter of a barren woman, there is no judgment, no acceptance or rejection. Barren woman's daughter, you cannot honestly say this is beautiful or this is ugly, because such judgments are ultimately quite subjective. This is young or this is old. There's nothing to judge, accept, or reject. In the same way, all phenomena included in samsara and nirvana are ultimately unified in equality. All phenomena appear conventionally, but all that is good or bad is equally pure and non-dual. Like turtle hair, the turtle hair, it never existed. If not, how could there be long or short ones? Now, the hair is too long, I need to cut it, or it's too short, grows out. No such evaluation exists. So all arising and ceasing in the world is part of prajna paramita, the great middle way. We think there is a birth and cessation, but in the end, they do not truly exist either. It's like the echo in an empty valley. It never really existed. In the same way, everything is originally empty in nature. Worldly conventions and names, including all kinds of awards and all sorts of prestigious fame, all these conventional phenomena dissolve into the deep ocean of emptiness and do not exist. So, as we have mentioned before, when it comes to understanding emptiness in particular, one should understand the middle way, because fundamentally nothing truly exists here. These four analogies teach that all dualistic phenomena in the world that we encounter in our lives should ultimately merge into one beautiful and seamless whole completely. Birth, cessation, samsara, nirvana, all conventional phenomena are non-existent. Right and wrong, beauty and ugliness, everything is encompassed within the same unity. So, as we have previously urged everyone to study the root verses of the middle way, and later many people studied it well. But I was concerned then that if we approach it from the top down, our understanding of cause and effect might be insufficient. So I urged everyone to also study the preliminary practices and bodhicitta, as well as other teachings related to the stages of the path. Especially this year, I have urged everyone to study the condensed Prajna Paramita Sutra. The merits of Prajna are immense. I think that studying Prajna, including the Diamond Sutra, in this way, our ego clinging may be lessened. If our ego clinging lessens, we will also handle many worldly matters better. It seems when we discuss Madhyamaka, everything is emptiness, everything is non-existent. But when you truly understand these principles, they are actually meaningful to you. So these four analogies show that even in conventional terms, these things do not exist. Using Madhyamaka reasoning to analyze all the myriad things that appear to us right now in this wonderfully colorful world, this vibrant world, when analyzed by Madhyamaka reasoning, compared to the son of a barren woman, rabbit's horn, turtle's hair, there is absolutely no difference. Those who have studied the great Prajna Paramita Sutra should be very clear about this point. So I hope everyone will keep studying continuously, because whenever I encounter situations, no matter what kind of environment I'm in, I should do what needs to be done. This is reasonable and lawful. As long as I don't break the law, then I do what I should do myself. It's not like I get scared when I face a little trouble and don't dare move. That's not the case. Sometimes when a turtle encounters something at its head, it pulls its head back in. But at other times, it slowly comes back out. It's the same principle for us all. The time we have in this world is limited. In our limited lifetime, doing meaningful things is very important for everyone. So these four analogies illustrate principle of appearing yet lacking inherent existence. Next now is the final concluding practice exercise at the end of this section, as we have just covered and discussed.
Ala la te namkar tavi ngang jigmet chudang charwir ke hong na tsor namtak churkur ngomchot ne kar neke tujien zambar sho.
The nature of non-arising is like space. The body of non-perishing is free from discursive elaboration. Having recognized it as the ultimate body, may the compassion of the compassionate one sustain us. The last one here should be this section, since this is about ending self-clinging. What is the final conclusion? The conclusion is realizing unborn emptiness, ending with a spiritual song verse. It might sound like om om. I don't know what you're talking about. But the point is that the author has already realized this state, like Longshenpa in the treasury of the Dharmadhatu, as he spoke. When he entered that realized state, he would sing a song of realization. When the Dharma king taught, it was the same. When he merged into that realized state, he would immediately sing a Vajra song of realization. Sometimes we couldn't even keep up, including when His Holiness was at Vajrasana in India. I just happened to have a tape recorder, otherwise there would be no way. I happened to record it. Now it's the essence of aspirations. So these masters of previous generations, when they reached a certain state of realization, it wasn't something forced out by our conceptual thoughts. They flowed out naturally. I think when the author reached the end, he also joyfully and enthusiastically sang such a verse. He means that at the beginning, there is an exclamation, represents the unborn. All phenomena are empty, not produced. Just like space, that's what the first line expresses. The second line is is a mantra syllable. It essentially represents non-cessation or non-action. It signifies freedom from elaboration without conceptual fabrications. Actually here, body and wisdom, these are all expressions of realization, including what we often discuss, the 3 bodies and 5 wisdoms. These show wisdom reaching a certain level of realization. They are not like our physical body, not a material body like that. So the first line shows emptiness, like space truly. Everything is unborn. The second is non-cessation. If there is no arising, then there can be no cessation and no fear. This is the body free from all concepts, the body beyond elaboration. The third sentence is Om Om. Originally it is Om Ahum, but here it is not like that. Om Om. Perhaps these simply have other meanings. Why is it Om Om and there should be other reasons. But there is a previous commentary by Geshe. He didn't explain it much. He just mentioned it briefly. So the third line, recognizing the pure Dharmakaya, which is actually our own mind, everything is unborn and unceasing. So recognizing the nature of our own mind as the primordially pure Dharmakaya, he consistently relies on the ancient traditional mantra Om Om, or uses such an invocation to let us realize the unborn, unceasing nature of mind, like space, the true face of one's own heart. This is what he expresses. Finally, on one hand, this represents his own realization. On the other hand, for us as later practitioners, we need to truly understand this meaning of unborn. In the poison-destroying Peacock mind training, what is ultimately the most important medicine for actually dispelling poison? Actually, it's realizing emptiness, using emptiness. Dzogchen is also like this. Mahamudra and Great Madhyamaka are similar. All the meanings that Buddhism calls emptiness, but this kind of emptiness, as we've mentioned many times before, is not the same as people talk about today, like the 4 elements are all empty. It's absolutely not that simple to understand, right? Finally, may all those who see, hear, or are aware of this treatise be embraced by the compassionate Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. This is the author's prayer. As we mentioned earlier in the introduction during the very first class, Dharmaraksita offered his own body. When his neighbor fell ill, he gave it to him. Later, Avalokiteshvara appeared as a white-robed layperson, and his neighbor was cured. From then on, he was cared for life after life. So for us studying the poison-destroying Peacock mind training, on one hand, we pray to this great master, highly revered by Atisha, who greatly benefited Tibetan Buddhism. Thanks to these great masters, so many of Atisha's lineage disciples have emerged, which was very meaningful to Tibetan Buddhism. Dharmaraksita's treatises exist in Tibet, but in fact, not even a single commentary has been found, so their propagation has been rather limited. Great masters once taught them, but no written records have survived. So for us, including future Chinese translations, if some explanations are given well, translated into Tibetan or other languages, perhaps they could contribute a bit in some way to the interpretation of this treatise. For some people who are on the same level as us, it could be of some help. Therefore, whether it is through listening, contemplation, or practice, seeing, hearing, and contemplating this treatise, may it help them realize the state of Dharmakaya, free from elaborations like space, and may their own faith be fully realized. This is truly the author's aspiration and blessing. On the other hand, everyone who studies, listens to, contemplates, and practices this treatise should receive the great compassion of the great compassionate Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. I hope that in the mind stream of each of us, on one hand, like Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, we vernuren great compassion, and on the other hand, just like Manjushri Bodhisattva, we gradually give rise to the profound spiritual realization of unborn emptiness in our mind stream. When His Holiness descended into this world, his first words spoken were Om Rapatsanadi, the Manjushri mantra. So our lineage also has a rather unique and remarkably special wisdom. In the records of the mountains behind Wutai Mountain, since I have to advertise, although I have no royalties, no commercial purpose, but I still have the purpose of letting everyone learn this is my real aim. So for our lineage, Manjushri Bodhisattva, it truly is very important. For everyone, gaining wisdom is very important. But most importantly, Manjushri Bodhisattva, whoever hears his name or connects with him, whoever recites his mantra, the merit is also immense. I also cited some scriptural texts as a concluding remark. So taking this unique opportunity is also, in a way, truly meaningful for us. Wutai Mountain should be a very good place. Of course, whether you go has nothing to do with me. It really doesn't matter. But I really hope that sentient beings can gain Manjushri's blessing. It seems that many people in our institute, including some Khenpos, after visiting Wutai Mountain, gained wisdom. Including when the Dharma King taught Pramanavartika and Madhyamaka, many found it much easier. His Holiness himself spoke of this. From our own experience, maybe it's just simply our own conceptual thinking, or maybe it really is after praying to Manjushri Bodhisattva, one should indeed receive great help in certain aspects. In this way, no matter what, the states we mentioned above, the profound, tranquil, luminous, unconditioned Dharma realm is what everyone yearns for and hopes to achieve and seeks to achieve state. At the same time, together with Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva and Manjushri Bodhisattva, until samsara is emptied, to remain in this world and liberate countless, boundless sentient beings. Next, we come to the concluding meaning of this treatise.
Shivsha Ramjamla Loju Mug Shani Li Yimje Lua me beam Turtup Top Yang, Stavanis me be Tonla Tesum me Perkirva, Ro Nagbu Kona Nebir, Namjura Dharma Raktita Jivsha Duck, Semchin La Mu Ba me be Nyonji Chembu Gunne Plane Jarva, Galax Kirchik Saram Mangalam.
Next, it's a concluding meaning. Just like peacocks roaming through the jungle of virulent poison, having already attained the pure wisdom eye that knows all phenomena, the author himself has quite a high regard for himself. Just like Sakya Pandita and Longshenpa often at the end of their writings engage in extensive self-praise. So you see, Dharmaraksita, these Indian scholars are not humble at all. His first characteristic is that regarding omniscient knowledge of all phenomena, he has wisdom eye sees phenomena. He has also gained the power of infallible cause and effect, and has gained the view that cause and effect never fail. He has no doubts about non-dual realization, nor any uncertainty about the meaning of Madhyamaka. He no longer has doubts, none at all. He has realized the Madhyamaka view. He should have later attained the Bhumis, as a dedicated yogi dwelling peacefully in the sacred Black Mountain cave. I don't know where Black Mountain is in India. Just saying Black Mountain isn't clear. At that time, I wonder what mountain am I living on right now, I wonder. A yogi residing in the Black Mountain cave. I, Dharma, composed these works for all sentient beings with impartial great compassion. He helps all beings with impartial compassion. So this treatise is truly excellent. I hope we all study it well. If you read it regularly, it will be very helpful for your practice. If the commentaries are sometimes just a bit too much for you, you can make a small booklet out of the teaching notes. For those with a good voice, please record these verses. Nowadays, audiobooks are quite convenient, aren't they? Or you could even sing them in the style of spiritual songs. Words of past masters are beneficial for the mental mind stream. May the merit of this become virtuous and wonderful, and may all be auspicious. This was translated by me on September 23 last year at Guru Rinpoche Palace by Peacock, Poison Eliminating Forest River in the Sichuan region, which is a very good place. There are many different kinds of birds, both large and small, that can be seen along the river bank. There are some fishermen, but nothing can be done about that. The translation at the majestic Guru Rinpoche Palace was completed. All right, today we have now completed this treatise. To be honest, I really wanted to finish this matter as well, but for a variety of different important reasons, I simply hadn't given these teachings before. This time, no matter what, in every possible way, it can be considered complete. I dedicate it to everyone and hope you all feel joyful. I hope that each person's mental mind stream will benefit from it. Just like the peacock is unafraid of the poison forest, may we in this degenerate age not fear obstacles, conditions, or afflictions. We should listen, contemplate, and practice. Cultivate continuously through listening, contemplating, and practicing. Rely on skillful means to spread the Dharma and benefit all beings. All right, we'll just stop here for today. This teaching is now complete and finished.
Bandhangara Padma Sada Bandhangara Padma Sada